everyone, I am Janina Begaso and welcome to English 114 or Technical Working Class. And today I will going to discuss to you the misuse of graphics. So, let's start.
Misuse of graphics. Technology has revolutionized the world of graphics by placing sophisticated tools in the hands of many writers. This largely positive event has dark side in that many graphics distort data and misinform the reader. This final chapter section shows what can happen to graphics when sound design principles are not applied.
So there are some classic types of misleading graphs that include cases like the vertical scale is too big or too small, it doesn't start at 0 or it skips number, the graph isn't labeled properly, and the data is left out.
Description of the problem. Through clutter or distortion, graphics can oversimplify data, be confusing or be misleading. To avoid misleading or confusing graphics, it is important to proofread and edit them carefully. If you are using charts or tables, it may be useful to ask someone else to look at them carefully to see if they interpret the graphics in the way that you intended. One of the most serious problems with graphics is that charts are often disproportional to the actual differences in the data represented. The next subsection shows some specific ways that this error has worked its way into contemporary graphics.
So when we say distorted graph, it refers to a graph that misrepresents data, constituting of a misuse of statistics, and with the result that incorrect conclusion may be derived from it.
Examples of distorted graphics.
This section gets the problem of misrepresentation by showing several examples and describing errors involved. None of the examples commit major errors, yet each one fails to represent the data accurately.
Example number 1. Confusing bar charts.
Figure 3 to 14 shows an accompanied report about sick days taken in an organization. The problem here is that the chart decoration, which is the beds, inhibits rather than promotes clear communication.
Although the writers intends to use bed symbolism in lieu of precise bars, the height of the beds does not correspond to the actual decrease in sick days. A revised graph appropriate for a report should include a traditional bar chart without the beds.
Another problem with bar charts is that they become busy or confusing, especially when options for creating chart in spreadsheet are not used carefully. Figure 3 to 15 shows several stack bars which make it hard to compare the data clearly. It also uses too many colors as well as colors that are similar and that would not reproduce well on a black and white copier.
Example number 2. Chart junk that confuses the reader.
Figure 3 to 16 concludes a report from a county government to its citizen, whereas the dollar backdrop is meant to reinforce the topic, that is, the use to which the tax funds are put. In fact, it impedes communication.
Readers cannot quickly see comparisons. Instead, they must read the entire list below the illustration, mentally rearranging the items into some order. At the very least, the expenditures should have been placed in sequence, from least to greatest percentage or vice versa. Even with this order, however, one could argue that a dollar bill is a piece of what Edward Taft, an expert in the visual display of data, calls chart junk.
The term chart junk was coined by Edward Taft in 1983 in his book The Visual Display of Quantitative Information, in which this refers to all visual elements in charts and graphs that are not necessary to comprehend the information represented on the graph or that it distracts the viewer from this information.
Example number 3. Confusing pie charts. The pie chart in Figure 317 omits percentages that should be attached to each of the budgetary expenditures, fails to move in a largest to smallest clockwise sequence, includes too many divisions, many of which are about the same size and thus difficult to distinguish, and introduces a third dimension that adds no value to the graphics.
So remember this, guys, that the correct pie chart should be a perfect circle, should have the percentage on the circle, and should move in a large to small sequence from the 12 o'clock position. So before I end with my discussion, let me share to you some ways on how we can avoid the misuse or the misinterpretation of the graphics. First is that it is important to proofread and edit them carefully. If you are using charts or table, it is important to ask someone else to look at them carefully to see if they interpret the graphics in the way that you intended to be. Next is that do a little bit of math and apply common sense. And lastly, fully utilize resources to conduct more research. Many people use graphs to communicate information. Graphs provide people with a way to interpret and make sense of data at a quick glance without having calculations. However, graphs can sometimes be misleading. So, in order to avoid the misuse or misleading graphics, we should always be careful in doing it, or we need to fully utilize resources to conduct more research. So, that's all guys. Thank you for listening and stay safe.